Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel, and today I'm here with my very first race and video on F1 22, and the venue is a Jeddah Corniche street circuit for a 25% 13 lap race. But before that we're going to get stuck into an 18-minute qualifying session to decide the grid, and as we begin our first run in said session, you may or may not have already realised that I'm racing as Zhou Guanyu this weekend, seeing as he is the only rookie for the 2022 season. He certainly isn't the only change though to driver lineups up and down the field, as we see the return of Kevin Magnussen and Alex Albon to the sport, while we have had some significant driver transfers, including George Russell to Mercedes and as a result Valtteri Bottas to Alfa Romeo. But back to ourselves here in qualifying. We're currently on a banker lap, then we're going to be able to throw all the cards on the table in our final run in this 18-minute dash for pole. We won't be fighting for pole, but it's been an absolutely insane first sector for a banker lap, and it's a 33.551. What a way to start the lap. Now we've just got to accompany that with a strong middle and final sector, and if we can do that, it's going to be incredibly difficult to improve on this time come the end of the qualifying session. But back to some of the major changes for the 2022 game, and the largest one is due to the new regulations. The cars are a lot heavier. They're also very squirrely on traction out of the corners. You've got to be silky smooth on the throttle when you're exiting a corner, unless you're going to be spinning around and losing the rear. That's the main issue, of course, traction. Another issue is locking up. Unlike on last year's game, you can get barely any steering input into the car when you're locking up, which means that you're very likely to go pretty much straight on. You want to avoid locking up at all costs, as you're going to lose a lot of time, potentially even go into a wall at a street circuit. But now we're completing our first lap. It's been a strong middle and final sector, and it's a 1 minute 39.24. What a way to start qualifying. And now we are out here for our final run. That lap places in P5, so an incredible and fruitful start. Hopefully we can continue that through the rest of the session into our final run. But on the exit of turn 2, we're all over the place as we went too wide onto the curb, squirreling around on the exit, and that's nearly cost us 2 tenths. And as a result, any chance of ourselves improving is slowly starting to evaporate as we head through the rest of the first sector. We are just starting to lose time, and time. The lap is falling away from ourselves, and yes, it's pretty much been put to bed now. We'll keep pushing just in case we can find any extra time in the middle and final sector, because on my first run, the first sector was absolutely immaculate, but then the concluding 2 sectors were strong, but there's certainly still 2.5 tenths to find. But that would take quite a lot of work, and you can see we're just not really gaining enough, and as a result I do not think we're going to be maintaining our P5 in this session. Russell back there in P6, he'll certainly improve and go past us. Hamilton further down the order, I'm sure he'll improve too, although we are really smooth through that previous section. It's only reduced the deficit though to our first run to 2 tenths, and as a result it's pretty much over. I do though think P7 is certainly still possible. That first lap was so incredible that we should still be able to beat the 2 Alpines of Fernando Alonso and Esteban Ocon. You can see on the exit out the final corner we needed heroics. That was never going to happen, and as a result we do not improve on this lap, but still a good result could be on the cards, and it is. Looking at the results of quali, P7 for ourselves, a great place to start the race from. But the man on pole is the Dutchman in the Red Bull, Max Verstappen, with a 1 minute 30.367. He'll line up on the front row alongside George Russell in P2 for Mercedes, and Carlos Sainz is P3 for Ferrari, alongside his teammate Charles Leclerc, who will start P4. The other Mercedes will start P5, that's Hamilton, and then Sergio Perez will start in P6 for Red Bull. We'll start in P7. Then the 2 Alpines follow, Fernando Alonso in P8, in front of Esteban Ocon in P9. Lando Norris will start from 10th for McLaren. Then outside the top 10, we got Gasly in 11th, followed by Vettel in 12th, Tsunoda in 13th, Albon in 14th, Schumacher in 15th, alongside his teammate Magnussen in 16th. Then we got Ricciardo in 17th, Latifi in 18th, Stroll in 19th. My teammate Valtteri Bottas didn't manage to set a time, presumably due to a mechanical issue. He'll work from the back in the Grand Prix. But now we're going to get stuck into our first race on F1 22.
Welcome from the Jeddah Street Circuit for what we hope is going to be a gripping spectacle of racing. It's time to get underway as we join the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. So let's take a look at the topographical map of the Jeddah Street Circuit. As you can see, a number of challenging corners for the drivers to master here. We'll see just how much the teams have benefited from their time spent in practice this weekend. And like many street circuits, this track has the potential to punish drivers that get it wrong. Let's hope we avoid any safety cars today. So with the race not far away from starting, here's what today's grid rundown looks like. Max Verstappen put in a fantastic lap yesterday, and he'll start from pole position. And starting next to them is George Russell. Considering the rest of the grid, we have Sainz, Leclerc, and Sir Lewis Hamilton, and Perez, Joe, Fernando Alonso, Ocon, and Lando Norris, Gasly, Vettel, Yuki Tsunoda, and Albon, Mick Schumacher, Magnussen, Daniel Ricciardo, and Nicholas Latifi. Stroll and Valtteri Bottas begins the race from the back of the grid. It's almost time for those 5 red lights to go out then. Let's see who can prevail today. Anthony Davidson joins me once again in the commentary box. Ant, it's fantastic to have you with us here, but I'm curious, as a man with experience out on the track, how do you stop those pre-race nerves from becoming overwhelming when you're lining up on the grid?
Well, I imagine they'll be starting to feel the adrenaline as they anticipate the rundown into turn 1, a bit like preparing to go into battle. The unknown situation will bring nerves, but that's a good thing. It will keep them focused on the moment and on their surroundings as we build towards the start of the Grand Prix.
Welcome to the formation lap here in Jeddah before the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, which gives me a perfect opportunity to talk about my tyre choice. And I've opted for the medium compound tyres at the start of the Grand Prix, so we can go on to the pacier softs towards the end of the race. And joining me on the mediums at the start, we've got my teammate Valtteri Bottas starting from dead last. Got the Alpine of Esteban Ocon, and further in front the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc. Everyone else has opted for the soft tyres, which means that they will likely go on to the medium tyres to complete the race. As a result, they will have an advantage at the start of the Grand Prix. However, that will then turn to ourselves towards the end when we're on the softer compound of tyre. Another thing to watch out for is tyre wear. That could play a key factor in today's race. But one of the new features on the F1 22 game is the immersive formation app, which allows you to plant your own car into your grid box. And we are going to be trying that for the first time in a second. Seeing as it is my first attempt, I'm going to be aiming for green, which means good. If you get purple, that means pretty much perfect. You want to avoid red, that means you've messed up your parking spot. You've either gone too far forwards, too far back, too far to the right, too far to the left, parked in the wrong grid box entirely, and so on. And as a result, the game will place you further back in your box, and that will certainly not help you off the start. You can see we've got this marker that's telling us which grid spot we are going to be driving into, and we get a solid green. Nowhere near as immaculate as Sergio Perez's experienced parking to the left, but it's solid enough, and now we've got to focus on the start. Could be difficult though, as we're on these medium tyres, but here we go for the first time on F1 22, 5 red lights. They're out and away we go, and it's not the best of initial starts for ourselves. Quite a lot of wheel spin off the line. An incredible start though for Fernando Alonso and his Alpine as he steams down to turn 1, working at the outside line at turn 1, inside line at turn 2. We're squeezing the Alpine a little bit, but we cannot slam the door shut as he's right there with an overlap. We're going to continue the battle into the second braking event on the lap. We go round the outside line and we keep our P7. I try to leave as much space as possible, but it's not meant for too wide through there. But as you can see, we lost a lot of time to Perez in front. We're struggling to find a rhythm early on in our medium tyres, and we're all over the place on the exit of sector 1. And Alonso will have the inside line into the 180-degree bank corner. We are pretty much defenceless round the outside, and the Alpine is through into P7 despite the rear end of that car squirreling around on the exit. Thankfully, Lando does not follow him through, and now we've got to focus on finding a rhythm, ensuring we maintain this P8 from the slower McLaren of Lando Norris behind, and then pretty much trying to not drop too far away from Fernando Alonso for when DRS arrives. But now on to lap number 2. Lando Norris about 3 tenths behind. Will he have a look into turn 1? I think he's too far back. Yes, he is. The AI might be more aggressive on this year's game, but that would have been way too far back to go for a move. But sadly, Fernando Norris's teammate Daniel Ricciardo, it's a pit stop on lap number 2. He must have broken his front wing on the opening lap. What a shame for Daniel. And without a safety car, that's his race pretty much over, as he'll have to go onto the hards until the end. What a shame for the Honey Badger. More bad luck in Formula 1 since he's joined McLaren. It's just not working for him. Meanwhile, we are starting to get a comfortable lead over Lando Norris, and that's quite evident as we begin the third lap. DRS enabled, so we want to say fairly close to the back of Fernando Alonso in front, so we'll be able to use that. But as you can see, heading through turn 1 and turn 2, clipping the curves, but we're all over the place on the exit of turn 2. Wasteful aggression on the throttle, we went onto the curb, and as a result, Lando Norris is going to have a look at us into the second braking event of the lap. We're going to do the exact same thing we did to Fernando Alonso. We leave as much space as possible, and we managed to defend the position round the outside line, but that's cost us 1.6 seconds, or around that, to the Alpine in front, and a huge mistake here. Thankfully, we didn't end up going into the wall and sustaining any damage, but on to lap number 4, we have managed to move away from the McLaren of Lando. The gap now over 1 second, so he could be vulnerable to Esteban Ocon, who might be on those medium tyres, but he's looking very pacey compared to the McLaren on the softs. But for ourselves, as a result, we've dropped so far away from Fernando Alonso. We're starting to find some pace and rhythm on these mediums, though. And as a result, we pretty much stabilised the gap to the Spaniard in front, but that mistake was incredibly costly. And you can see that tyre wear for those on the softs must be pretty bad, considering we have 19%, 90 would be very bad, that would be puncture territory, 19% on the right rear for ourselves. So the soft tyres mustn't be great. Meanwhile, further back, Norris and Ocon, I said they'd be close. Ocon clearly had a look at a move. He got alongside and in front at one stage. But it is Lando who stays in front for the time being. But look at this, they're side by side as we head down to turn 1. It's Alpine versus McLaren jockeying for position. We're heading through turn 1 and turn 2. Meanwhile, Lando Norris defends from Esteban Ocon, and Gasly comes through into P10. So Gasly picks up the leftovers. Fantastic work in his Alpha Tauri, and as a result for Ocon, he's dropped down to P11, so that's very frustrating for him. Meanwhile, his teammate Fernando Alonso up there in P7, but fantastic to see some fighting between the AI early on in this Grand Prix on lap number 5, and now later on the lap, you can see we're further extending our gap to Lando, 1.5 seconds now. Alonso, they're starting to find a bit more pace on his soft, he's starting to get away a bit further, as now Gasly moving up in front of Lando Norris, but then Ocon gets back in front of Gasly. Norris maintains P9, and further back it's all unfolding. Meanwhile, pit stops for Perez Alonso, and both Ferraris are in. I cannot believe what's happening here. Mid-race, an absolute drama. Both Ferraris in. Charles Leclerc was meant to be on the mediums. He is on the mediums, supposed to be going onto the softs. He's had to pit early, so he must have got front wing damage. They brought both Ferraris in. It's a double stack there, and look how far behind Charles is going to come out. He's still exiting the pit lane. His teammate is well out of that. And this is pretty much Charles' race over at the moment now. Surely they could have kept him out another lap and he wouldn't have lost so much time from being out there with a broken front wing compared to having a double stack. Or they could have kept Carlos out another lap. I mean, Verstappen and Hamilton are staying on. Surely they could have done that. As a result, Charles' race, though, is absolutely ruined. And towards the end of lap number 6, we're going to see the pit stops for the likes of Verstappen, Hamilton, Lando Norris. Esteban Ocon shouldn't be in, but he's fighting Lando Norris. Look at that. Fantastic to see further back. Ocon up into P4. Didn't really need to do that, as Lando will be boxing at the end of this lap. Verstappen and Hamilton in. Carlos currently leads George Russell and Sergio Perez. The question is, will Verstappen and Hamilton come out? Of course, Ocon stays on his medium tyres, keeps on going, is probably on the same strategy as ourselves, a medium to soft, one stop. Valtteri Bottas, my teammate, continuing along on his mediums, 8.2 seconds behind. That's the effect of starting from the back of the grid, but you can see Verstappen out in P3 really shows his dominance in this race, and it seems that Carlos Sainz, yes, he is out in front of both Mercedes, and it is Sergio Perez currently behind, I do believe, the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton at the moment. Meanwhile, Charles Leclerc all the way back down the field, stuck in a gaggle of cars, and as I said, his race is pretty much over. Huge shame for him, that front wing damage proving incredibly costly. And now towards the end of lap number 8, we are going to be boxing probably at the end of this lap. You can see tyre wear fairly high. 8 laps around Jeddah should not really give you 32% tyre wear on the front, 31% wear on the left rear, and 35% wear on the right rear. So tyre wear evidently high at the moment, and you can see we're starting to struggle. Ocon closing on us, nearly under a 1 second gap, but we're going to be boxing this time round. That's the strategy. Meanwhile, Carlos Sainz, I do believe, P4 at the moment. We are into the pits, not carrying too much speed, and very easy to crash onto the BWT wall on entry. Don't want to break front wing there as Max Verstappen sets the fastest lap, a 1 minute 32.8 for him. We are going to try the new feature. We get a good turn in the pit stop, so a 2.6 to 2.9, and it is a 2.9, so not the best of pit stops from the team, but nice new feature. Yes, it's only pressing a button, but it's still something different, just gets a bit more engaged in the pit box, and now we exit the pits in P8, so fantastic for ourselves. We've got in the position where we were before we pitted, and Valtteri Bottas is still to pit. You can see we're getting the tyres warmed up. That's why I wanted to go into the softs. Tyre warm up really bad from what I've seen so far on this year's game. So going for the soft tyres is certainly a better option. And you can see, after just the first sector, they're up to temperature. And now we can start to put in some stonking laps. But look at that Ocon on the hard tyres. A huge strategy mistake there. Meanwhile, further in front, Alonso and Hamilton fighting. Hamilton's struggling. He's dropped further back from Perez, maybe got an issue, and as a result he's fighting with Alonso for P6, but for ourselves currently P8 at the moment on our softs. That will be P7 once my teammate is pitted, but Ocon on the hards, a huge strategy mistake at Alpine, very costly. I thought he'd be going on to the softs, he didn't, as my teammate Valtteri Bottas is in, so we inherit that P9. As a result, Bottas will drop towards the rear of the field. But in front, Alonso in front of Hamilton, and you can see Hamilton already dropping. We know that Mercedes is a faster car. He came out in front of Perez, he's dropped behind Perez, and he's dropped behind the Spaniard, and as a result, Lewis down into P6. It's going to be quite vulnerable to ourselves. If we can start to put in some decent laps on these soft compound tyres, although they're already sustaining quite a lot of tyre wear, but if we can put in some solid laps, we are going to be right onto the gearbox of Lewis, and hopefully we can take that P6 from him. And as you can see, on to lap number 11, we've done an awful lot of catching. We're now within DRS. We didn't get it for the main straight, as we weren't within 1 second at the activation point. However, we were once we'd reached, well, not the activation point, the detection zone. We were pretty much once we'd reached the activation point, but as you can see, we've just got to continue to chase onto the Mercedes in front. He's dropped a long way behind Alonso, so I don't think this is Hamilton's true place. Clearly struggling at this stage on lap number 11. I think he's got an issue. Potentially could be side pods or floor damage. You can't come into the pits to repair that. You could repair your front wing, so it won't be that. But as you can see, look how much we've gained on him through the first sector. We're pretty much there, and surely a move beckons for ourselves. This could be P6. What a result that will be. Not as good a result, though, as it will be for Fernando Alonso. P5 at the moment in that Alpine. As now, straight into the action, down into turn 1 on lap number 12. Somehow, Hamilton now breaks us, goes round the outside line, and keeps P6. Some fantastic defending from the Brit. Great to see the AI being nice and aggressive as we headed down to turn 1. And as a result, we're going to have to try again later on lap number 12. We need to get a move on because tyre wear certainly isn't helping us. 22% already on the front. Well, as I say that, it's now 23% on the front. So that's how bad tyre wear is at the moment. So if we don't get a move on, our tyres are going to fall off a cliff, and any chance of P6 is going to pretty much evaporate. But you can see we're continuing to chase onto Hamilton. Clearly he's struggling with his medium tyres, all squirreling round on the exit. Further back, Ocon dropping away. That's quite expected on the hard tyres. Max Verstappen set to be the race winner. And it will be 3 different teams on the podium, as it will be Carlos Sainz in P2 for Ferrari, and then it'll be the Mercedes George Russell in P3. But you can see we're struggling on our tyres. We're trying to push and keep up with the pace of Hamilton, but we're just dropping further and further away, and you can see all over the place, through there, onto the curb, over the curb, back over the curb. That's not what you want to do. Thankfully we don't spin out, but now the gap to Hamilton nearly a whole second. We've got to go for heroics into the final corner if we want a chance of overtaking him. We break at the normal point, but it's a massive look up for ourselves, and you can see, as I was saying earlier, you can't get the turn in on this year's car. We end up going wide, and now we're over a second behind. We've still got DRS because we were within a second at the detection zone, but now any chance of overtaking Lewis is gone. Our tyres are pretty dead, to say the least. 30% on the rear right. We're going to have to settle for P7. But still, for our first race on F1 22. P7 is an extremely respectable result, considering we're in the Alpha Romeo. As I was saying, Alonso with a great result up into P5. Ocon currently in P8. Gasly in P9, running well in his Alpha Tauri. Just behind him, though, it is, I do believe, the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc. Can Charles make it P9 and continue his recovery? He currently sits in front of the McLaren of Lando Norris, who is just outside the points now. Real shame for him. A great effort out there today. Meanwhile, the McLaren of Daniel Ricciardo, as suspected, is currently at the back. I think he will have gone onto the hard tyres, so because of that, he's just not going to have the pace of those soft runners, even if they're in slower Williams. And then once he is then caught up to them, because they've pitted, he's then going to be stuck behind them on more warm tyres and, of course, a harder compound. So a real shame for the Honey Badger. But now we're approaching the end of the lap. We're dropping away from Lewis. We do not have the pace due to tyre wear. Very telling. Usually a low tyre wear track, and our softs are pretty much burning. But your winner here today, it's the Red Bull of Max Verstappen. A dominant victory from Carlos Sainz, and it's going to be George Russell P3, even though Sergio Perez is catching on to him. P4 is Checo, P5 Alonso, P6 Hamilton, and we are going to come home to finish P7.
Okay, pick up rubber and bring it home.
Brilliant stuff from Red Bull today. What a superb victory. Talk to me, Ant. What was it that set them apart from the competition today?
I really feel the track layout combined with the track temperatures we saw today suited their car. These cars come alive when the tyres are just at the right temperature, and the driver did a great job managing that as well. They just look so comfortable out there. It's like anything, it always looks so easy when it all just clicks.
The drivers are en route to the podium as we speak. What a fantastic win for the Red Bull team. They performed exceptionally today, keeping us firmly on the edge of our seats throughout the entirety of the race. Congratulations to everybody at the team.
A thoroughly enjoyable race for ourselves out there today as we finish exactly where we started. P7 on the grid to P7 at the flag, taking a total of 6 points. Bit of a shame that we didn't manage to get past Lewis at the end of the Grand Prix, but we mustn't let that dampen an incredibly strong result for ourselves. Your race winner, those Max Verstappen, also taking the fastest lap of 1:32.074, followed by Carlos Sainz, who finished in P2 for Ferrari. George Russell rounded out the podium in P3 for Mercedes, closely pursued by Sergio Perez, who finished in P4 for Red Bull. Well, it was an incredibly strong P5 for Fernando Alonso in his Alpine. Lewis Hamilton then finished in P6 for Mercedes, while we were P7, followed by the Alpine of Esteban Ocon, who finished in P8, his fellow countryman Pierre Gasly finishing P9 for Alpha Tauri, while the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc rounded out the top 10. He recovered to take a solitary point. Yuki Tsunoda then finished in P11, followed by Lando Norris in P12. Sebastian Vettel was P13 in front of Mick Schumacher in P14. His teammate Kevin Magnussen finishing in P15, while Valtteri Bottas, my teammate, recovered to P16. Lance Stroll finished in P17. Alexander Albon finished in P18, followed by his teammate Nicholas Latifi in P19, while Daniel Ricciardo finished dead last in P20. He could not recover after breaking his front wing and pitting at the end of the first lap. If you guys have enjoyed today's video, you might enjoy two of the suggested videos on the right hand side of the screen. But thanks a lot for watching, and I'll catch you all very soon for some more F1 22 content.